as far as just so the board members, how do you guys want to run this? What do we just ask each candidate the same question? We really didn't prep as we may have in the past.
Are we required to ask them all the same questions?
I guess I'll say under Ann's regime, we were.
I think it's maybe them giving what qualifies them to be your interim fire chief. Let them talk a little bit about themselves, and then maybe just go around and if there's follow-up questions. And we're only scheduling each one for 15 minutes. So by the time they get through it, you do introductions. It's going to go pretty quick.
That all sounds good. Okay, I agree.
For what it's worth, the prior guidance I believe was like alluded to with was spoke to. And that's been concerned was, an HR concern that for fairness, everybody gets asked the same question. But if each person's resume prompts very different questions,
Absolutely.
which is obvious, then the way to get at them is in follow-up questions, I guess.
Correct.
So,
Yeah. And this is just an interim. If this was a permanent full-time job, I think we'd be considering something different, right? We would have given you questions and said here, and then you can do follow-up questions off of the questions. But this is somebody that's already been established and has already done the job. So
sounds good.
Story. Yeah.
Let me just ask. I see Tom on the call. I'm sure that's okay, and I definitely want his input and thoughts on this. But how much interaction should Tom have during the interview process?
I don't think any. The reason why it's set up like this, Chuck, is we didn't set it up like we did a regular select board meeting. So any citizen that comes in would be showing too and wouldn't be allowed to speak. So this is just, the board only.
I'm all with Anthony. I'm just there. You guys do what's right for the town, right? Well, I'll make it work. It's temporary, like Anthony said. So
Thank you, Tom.
all right.
Good.
All right. So are you ready? Joe will let in the first candidate and the board ready?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, Joe, let in the first candidate and I'll do the introductions.
Okay, first candidate is Christopher Olson.
Hi, Chris. This is Anthony Insaldi. I'm the town administrator.
Hi, Anthony. How are you? Where
Good.
are you?
I am up the top. I'm right here waving.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Hi,
Well,
Anthony.
your camera is off. Do you realize that, or is that?
I do not. There we go. There we go. Oh, now you can't see me.
The morning sun?
Yeah, I'm on Cape Cod. Can you believe it? It's
Oh,
just
there you
beautiful.
go.
Yeah,
well.
it's beautiful. There we
Yeah,
go.
that was
How's
a little
that?
better.
Is that better?
That's perfect.
That's better. So, Chris, let me introduce you to everybody on here. Joe Layden is the assistant town administrator.
Hey, Joe.
Chuck DeCoste is the select board chair.
Morning, Chris.
Good morning,
Paul
sir.
Glavy is the select board vice chair.
Good morning.
Matthew Nordhaus is the select board clerk.
Good morning.
Good
And
morning,
then there's
sir.
two members, Joe Knox is a select board member, and then listening in also is select board member Cindy Napoli.
Cindy.
So
Got it,
she's
yeah.
listening in. She may not be able to communicate back, but I'm sure she says welcome.
Yes, thank you. Very good. I can feel it. This Zoom stuff, I don't know, gentlemen, and ladies, I'd love to actually go in person. I'm not a Zoom person. I'm so much of a people person, so it's just really strange for me, but it's all good.
All right, so Chris, I think how we're going to start. Oh, Chuck, unless you want to take the lead.
No, just go ahead, take the lead,
Okay.
Anthony. That's going good.
So, Chris, I think the board has already had the opportunity to review your resume, and we have we schedule these for about 15 minutes or so because I think it's a good opportunity for you to tell the board why you think you'd be a good interim candidate, and then the board could ask follow-up questions for that.
Sure.
And then certainly
Okay.
you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of the board at the end too.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Am I good to go?
You're good to go.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies, for inviting me here in this Zoom meeting and to bring me in as an interim chief. This is, I've been retired from Cotuit, Massachusetts, here on Cape Cod for about 4 years. And in those 4 years, Brian's had me busy. He's had me busy in like 8 other different departments and been an interim fire chief for 3 departments and 1 full-time department in Rhode Island, and then combination departments elsewhere, as well as a mentorship I did for 3 other departments. So I've been very, very busy. It's been wonderful. I can't say no. It's very difficult for me to say no, and it's just been wonderful. So to come into Littleton, this would be wonderful. And why? The question was why I make a great candidate. Well, I certainly have experience over 30 and a half years in public safety. I was a police officer for 2.5 years, as you saw in my resume. I don't know if that's on my resume or not. And then I went from the police department to the fire department and worked my way up from firefighter all the way to fire chief. I have a degree in psychology. I use it every moment, every second. And I have about 5 more classes left in my leadership degree from a master's in leadership. And that's through the Catholic University and in Washington, D.C. online program. I have since stopped that just because I've been so busy, but I plan to initiate that and get that done in the near future. But I've been a paramedic for 20 some odd years. Love it. Been a dive instructor. I come with a whole bunch of experience and knowledge, and I am very excited. I'm a very excited person. Wide open. What you see here, sorry, gentlemen and ladies, that's what you get. There's no hidden agenda. I never have. I've always come in and I come in pretty fair. No problem discipline. That's just the way it is. It's all business with me. And it's business, but with a smile. Always have that. So I think I would bring a lot to the table to Littleton. I've looked at, your community, did a little research, a little homework, roughly, and it was in the 2020 area that they have on the website. So 97 plus, and you probably have more residents now for 2 years on, but we've got about 1888 calls. I think you have 2,000 something calls now. You have 3 engines. I looked at all the equipment you folks have. It looks like Littleton is set up very well. Kudos to you guys. It looks really, really nice, and it looks like a plug and play. And love to have the opportunity to be your interim fire chief. It's something that I love. I love the fire service. I love giving back. Sure, yeah, I make a little extra money, no doubt. But I love coming in and having some fun and also getting some work done. I have so much background in terms of personal dynamics, from the critical incident stress management teams to my psychology degree to, my martial arts I teach. And, I've been teaching diving for years for NAUI. I see, what is this? Matthew, you're in scouting, it looks like, or your son is. Yeah, I love it.
That's correct.
Yes, I was a scout master for many years, and I loved it. That was great. And in my old department, the one I retired at, I started Explorer Post there. So I'm very much in tune with that. We did a COPE program, which is Challenging Opportunity or Outdoor Personal Encounters. Excellent program. But yeah, all that stuff, bringing that all in. When I was deputy fire chief, I was in the Donahue Institute, and that's when I received my Officer 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't know if they even do that anymore, but I was also credited as a fire chief, as you saw on my resume, in 2012, I believe it was. So yeah, so I am, ask away any questions. I am ready to go. I'll start like in another hour if you want. It takes me about an hour to get from the Cape, so it's all good. Yeah, ready to go. Put me in, coach. I'm ready. Ready.
Little Don Fogarty reference never hurts.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, no, I have ready. I'm ready. And if there's anything that I can answer, any questions about myself, I love talking about myself. Yeah. So anything at all, it's go ask personal, doesn't matter. It does not matter. I'm just a wide open book.
Okay. Does anybody want to start, or you just want me to kind of call on folks, or any questions specifically? Any follow-ups? Board members?
I have one.
Go ahead, Mike.
I guess, could you maybe expand a little on your approach towards how you're going to approach the department, existing situation, existing policies versus what you would like to do, or what experience you might bring that's not already there?
Yeah, sure. Great question. Thank you for asking that question. So the first thing that I always do when I come in a department is always meet up with all of the rank and file. I'm a huge chain of command person. I have plethora of SOPs and SOGs that comes in with me. I bring my Macintosh with me, and I have a ton of SOPs and SOGs, standing operating procedures and guidelines. I have a ton of mission statements, visions, and a whole bunch of stuff, strategic planning. So usually what I do is I come in and I like to meet with everybody in a department meeting. I'll definitely meet with the officers first because the chain goes down the same way as it goes up, right? So I'll meet with them first, get them on board, find out where they are, and then meet with the whole department with all the staff members. And then I will bring each person into the office and start start implementing things if we need, like, SOPs and SOGs. Do we have, what do we have for SOPs, SOGs? Are they up to date? Are they not up to date? If not, then let's get them up to date where we need to be. Any kind of strategic planning, a 3, a 5, a 10-year plan. That's something that you really need to have. And if you don't, then that's something that we need to work on. Did the outgoing chief leave me a folder that basically, when every time I leave place, I leave a folder saying, this is the vision that I started with, this is what we've done, and this is what you should be looking at. They can follow it. They don't have to follow it. They're a fire chief, whatever, but at least it gives them a direction on where I was, where we actually were thinking about going in the department. So, as a fire chief, we just steer the ship. I mean, really the firefighters, the officers, they really run the show. But it's up to me to come in and say, okay, are we going in the right direction? And, I bring in like observation forms. I observe people. I bring them in once a month. I bring everybody in to my office and sit and talk with them and ask questions. And then and if there's any kind of modalities, any kind of problems that they have, then we either clear it there, or we give them a vision on which way they need to go, or at least where I think they need to go, and then we implement it. I'm huge on bringing people in, then talking to them, and then going back to them and say, hey, listen, thank you very much. We had this great conversation, and I always email them back and look, this is the points that we talked about. I'd like to see this, and this. Let's get together another 3 weeks, and then we just keep on moving. It's just communications paramount. It's just always communicate. So I'll bring communications to that table. I'll bring a strategic plan. I'll find out first of all, where we are, as Littleton Fire, where we look like to go, where we need to go. Are there anything that is really in negligent on any part, and then fix it. That's my job. My job is to fix things. I fix things. That's my job, and that's what I've always done, and I love it. I embrace the challenge always. So it's just the way it's going to be.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks,
Hope I
Chris.
answered that question.
You did.
Mr. Knox, Mr. Glavy, any questions or comments?
Come on, you people! You gotta have tons of questions for me. I'm so excited. I'm always like this.
I'll jump in, kind of more of a comment than it is a question, but I'm interested. You kind of answered this already. The fact that you have the psychology degree, I think, is intriguing to me at least. You seem to take a lot of pride in yourself and the fact that you can continue your education, master's in leadership, well underway.
Yeah.
How have you used your psychology degree as a manager in the past and as a leader?
Oh man, that's just a great question. Thank you. So every day, every moment, every second, I use that degree. It's amazing. Thank you, Mom and Dad. But they're in heaven now, but thank you. But every day. So what I would do is, that's that personal dynamics that I bring to the table, and that's through the psychology part of it all. Again, there is no hidden agenda. What they see is what they're going to get, and they'll know that right off the bat. I love reading people. That's an art that the good Lord gave me, and a grace, and it's been wonderful. So I utilize that to position them in a different position if they need to be. So if we have an issue with somebody, say like there's a grievance or something like that, before it gets to a grievance, they've already had maybe 3 or 4 conversations with me, just because I know it's coming. I know you can see it. I've been in this this job long enough, and with my psychology degree, I could see that. I could see there's something wrong, or I feel there's something wrong, and I just go right at it and just say, hey, what's going on? How can we fix this? I ask my firefighters in my offices, if you come into my office, if there's a complaint, no problem, but I need a solution. Give me a solution. And this is again the psychology. I want them to buy in. They need to engage themselves in the department. It's not me. It's just me steering them in the right direction of where they need to be, how they need to act, and from there. And I believe it starts from the top. I'm the father of the department, right? We got moms and dads, and if I don't uphold myself to a good standard, then my firefighters are not going to do the same. So that right there in itself is going to allow them and give them that latitude to really embrace who they are. Because I think once they figure that out, and if they haven't, I'll certainly figure out for them, and then I'll let them know, hey, listen, this is what I say. What do you say? And then we kind of have a kind of a one-on-one. Like we do in critical incident stress after a pretty tough scene. We really sit down and we don't talk about feelings, but we talk about what's going on. Where, when this happened, what happened? When you made that decision, why did you make that decision? And again, it's not I always thought, hey, this is not a fault of yours. We're gonna fix this. It's all behavior. I was big time in behavioral psychology. It's all behavior. It's not the person. It's never a person. It's always the behavior. It's the actions of what they're doing. And that's what I usually go after. Never go after a person. I always go after their behavior. Hopefully it's good. And if it's not, we're going to make it good.
Excellent. Thank you.
I hope I answered that. All right. Any personal questions?
I'll jump in,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if you.
Absolutely. Please, Paul.
Okay, yeah, I'll thank you very much, and it's your enthusiasm shows through, as do your impressive accomplishments and talent. But let me just maybe hit a couple of topics and let you weave them in together as in one answer, or however you want to do it. But it sounds like you've already addressed two of the principal questions I have, which is, one is, what's your understanding of Littleton in our department? You've done your homework there, or somewhat you have anyway, and that's great. And two is, seeing that you live on the Cape, or can just wondering whether or not you were planning on commuting or temporarily relocating here. The second, then the other question is, if you looked at our situation here, you're probably aware that we are actually in the final stages of what we hope is the final stages of a hiring process. We've actually had this vacancy since last July. We have had very able service from our deputy as interim, and we've just asked too much of him to this date. So this could well be a very short-term interim position. And just wondering whether you thought through that final point, and I'll be asking this of everybody. The one thing that's ongoing that needs addressing during this process is we are in contract negotiations with the bargaining unit, and I wonder whether you've given thought to that, or how you see yourself playing into that, entering into the game for a short term, as you would be.
Yes, definitely. So for the first question, the living. So I like to be engaged. So I like to be there. I don't know what the situation is with you folks. Do you house people or not house people? Do I stay at the fire station, not stay at the fire station, or do I commute? We can always figure that out. I have no issues either way. I like being engaged. My wife knows that. We've been married so many years, and it's been wonderful. She gets me. I get her. Poor thing. I feel bad. Weak moment. She said yes. But yes. To answer that question, I would probably commute until I figure out something, and then or figure out something with you folks. And if not, then I would figure out something myself, and then work there. I just like being engaged. I don't like not knowing. I have to have my hands on things. I'm a hands-on person. I really need to be involved. And for the second question about the 2 months, 2, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, I have no issues. Brian just always sends me in. So it's like, it's not a problem. Whatever it is, if it's 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, it is what it is. I look forward to meeting the two candidates if that's an opportunity for me later on down the road. And that would be great. So I have no problems with that whatsoever. And the last question about the bargaining units, I was union president for many years, and I've bargained many contracts, developed many contracts. I've also been on the other side of bargaining too, as well as manager, obviously as fire chief. No issues. Again, to me, it's just a give and take and give process. So nothing personal, and never have. And I always tell my guys that it's not personal. Not personal that they have money, they don't have money. It's just not, it's just, we gotta, what do we need? What do we actually need? And then go from there. They'll get a lot of insight from me in terms of talking about different ways of approaching things. And if they're smart, they would use that. If they don't, that's okay. That's up to them. But being involved I've been on both sides. So I don't really have an issue with bargaining. Or union contracts or unions or non-unions or call firefighters, because I know we do have a combination department here. I just embrace it all, embrace the challenge of bringing the combination department together. So the bargaining is not an issue whatsoever. Do you have the call firefighters on does human resources? I know I see Michelle here. Does human resources have a contract with the call department, like a handbook or anything like that?
No. Well, a handbook, yes, but not.
Yeah, no contract.
No contract. Okay, with them. Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, no, I hope I answered that question. If I can elaborate
Yes.
on you. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joe, do you have any comments or questions?
Just quickly, Chris, thanks very much for spending the time with us this morning. You certainly have the talents to relay all the information about yourself, and I really appreciate that. Just one quick question.
Sure.
Littleton relies heavily on an ambulance service. How familiar are you as a chief with running an ambulance service?
Yeah, so great question, Joe. And I did see that. It looks like you're 80-20 or so, 80% EMS, 20% fire, or maybe a little more. I know back in 2020, you had 1888 calls, and probably 900 or so, or maybe 800 were EMS. So, I mean, that's a majority of your calls. I'll know that in the fire service. If we didn't have the ambulance, we'd be in trouble. So as a paramedic for 27 years, I was on the back of that ambulance all the time. And when I left Katuitt, on the Cape here, we've always had our ambulances since the 70s. So fire-based EMS, I think, is fantastic. I applaud you guys to have seen that for years ago. I think it's great. So the ambulance is fine, but I did notice your ambulances. Are they slated to be? I think they're 2012 and 20. Are they slated as every 7 to 10 years that you guys replace ambulances, or because it looks like? Yeah, I was going to say it looks like it's a year out. It's Chuck. It's a year out to order these ambulances. You can't get them. It's crazy because I know. So okay. Yeah, so Joe, I'm very familiar with EMS system. I love it. I love EMS. I actually, when I got my psychology degree, I was actually double major in emergency medicine at Springfield College. So I went to Springfield College in Mass, and I loved it. It was great. That's that whole spirit, body, and mind thing that I do. It's just wonderful. And, you could tell a Springfield graduate, they all are the same, where there's inverted triangles, the spirit, body, and mind. It's just great. But yes, no, I'm in tune. I actually took my EMT class there, and I was involved in the emergency medical management degree that they had there. I just didn't finish that degree because I went right into the fire service after that. But that was a great, yeah. So I'm very familiar with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Chris, at this point, we went a little bit over, but do you have any questions of us?
No, I think you've answered the questions I was going to answer about the living, and I we'll figure that out as we go, as whatever it is. The timing of how many months or so, that's up in the air, it seems like, and that's okay. Whatever it is, that's fine. My house in Wolfboro, New Hampshire is about 100 miles, a little less than that to there. And I'm being on the Cape every once in a while too. So I'm not too far. I'm not worried about that. But I definitely like to be involved. So if I get closer to nicer weather, I'll bring my fifth wheel in. There's got to be a campgrounds around there somewhere.
Oh, yeah. We can figure something out.
There you go. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But no, it's not. Guys, and gentlemen, I want to thank you, and ladies, I want to thank you so much for allowing me to be here. It's great to have an opportunity, and I thank the good Lord for that and the graces of what you folks do. It's not fun, I know, but you know what? If we can smile on some of these things, then that makes the world much better. So, so thank you so much. If you have no other questions, just like I always say to Brian, put me in, coach. I'm ready. I'll be there in an hour.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. So I guess we communicate with Brian. So Michelle will, after this process, Michelle will be in touch with Brian and let you know what the results of this morning's deliberations will be. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, people.
Pleasure to
Chris.
meet you.
Thank
You
you.
too all. Thank you.
All right,
God
be well.
bless. Take care now.
Likewise. Thank you.
Okay. We are notifying some applicants that we're running behind. So the next one here is Ray.
If Anthony, just before we do that, because we have an HP in the waiting room and because this is a public meeting, and I'd probably want to propose that we admit them so we can make sure they're not a candidate. And then that way we can rename themselves so that we can at least allow them and just figure out rather than have someone state they were trying to attend as a member of the public.
Okay, fine. Do you want to do that, Joe? About the minute?
Yeah. Hello. There's someone that just joined the meeting with the initials HP. If you can rename yourself, or at least let us know who it is so we can rename you. This is a public meeting.
We have an ID on that iPhone too, Joe?
No, but because we have some of the candidates, just want to make sure that HP is not one of the candidates. And then if they are, we can then put them back. So if into the waiting room.
But wouldn't that same thing apply to the iPhone though too?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, and the iPhone too, if you can just let us know who you are, just to.
There you go.
And you are?
Bob Robitel. Bob Robitel.
Oh, okay, Bob. So you're a
Okay.
candidate. So we're gonna end up putting you back in the waiting room until we're
Yep.
ready. We are running a little bit behind, but thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, thanks.
All right, iPhones seem to have left us. So
Right, correct.
all right, so we're ready for
Okay.
Ray. Joe?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Hi, Ray. My name's Anthony Ansaldi. I'm up on the top. Well, not on the top, but to my screen on the top. I'm the town administrator for the town of Littleton. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hi.
So
Good
let me,
morning.
I'm going to introduce you to our select board. Our chair is Chuck DeCoste.
Morning.
Our
Good morning. Hi, Chuck.
vice chair is Paul Glavy.
Morning.
Hi, Paul.
The clerk of the board, select board, is Matthew Nordhaus.
Hello.
Hello, Matthew.
And then we have select board members, Cindy Napoli, who is listening and wishes the best to all candidates, and then Joe Knox.
Hi, Joe.
So Ray, I'm gonna, if you could start maybe by just talking a little bit about what would make you a good interim fire chief for the town of Littleton, and then our chair will take over for questions of the board.
Okay, sure. So I think what makes me a good candidate for interim fire chief is that I've got a tremendous amount of training, education, and experience, along with, excuse me, a lot of operational experience. So I've been a consultant with municipal resources for the last decade, where we go in and out of communities up and down the Northeast, getting intimate knowledge of them and helping them find out good solutions for their problems that fit the local financial constraints, political constraints, and community priorities. Before that, you see from my resume, a career firefighter in Washington, D.C., 28 years, in a high call volume, high threat environment, and I thrived there, getting promoted several times. So I think with my training, education experience, my operational background, and my understanding of how to come in and help fix problems on a short-term basis, I think I'd be a really good candidate.
Okay. Thanks, Ray. This time, open it up to select board members. You want to go in the same order? Matthew, you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to understanding what the situation is in our station, and how you would balance the addressing those immediate needs with bringing any experience you may have that is beneficial from the outside?
Sure. So I understand the need is, currently you need an interim chief. I understand the process is already ongoing till you have a permanent chief. I think as an interim, when you come in, you meet people where they are. I think there's tremendous opportunity to present an example and teach, mentor, and grow the people who are there, provide them a perspective that they may not have had. So I think with my experience, I would offer a good, unique perspective there. And so that's how I would approach that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Mr. Glavy, any questions?
Yeah. Obviously, we're in Littleton, Mass, and you're presently still in the Washington, D.C. area.
No, I currently live in South Florida.
Oh, South Florida. Okay, even a bit more.
Now you're just rubbing it in, right?
It's really cold here today. It's like 58. So
Yeah.
My heart is bleeding.
Right.
Well, what I'll do, just to be consistent with what I do with the previous candidate, is I'll lump my questions together as a pile, and you sort through it.
Okay.
And that's a question of what your expectations are in terms of a relocation, if that was your, if you were offered the position. 2, what do you know about our department, Littleton? We're have a hybrid setup with call and career full-time firefighters. Other points are, if you're aware of Littleton, that you would know 2 things, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts on that. One is that while this chief position has been vacant since last June, we've had an interim, the deputy, who's been terrific for us, but we've asked too much of him at this point. And while we're close to the end on appointing a permanent fire chief, this could well be a short-term gig. So I wonder if you've given that thought. Yet, during that time period, we're also very active in negotiations with the bargaining unit of the firefighters. So, given that situation, how do you? What are your thoughts on those topics?
Sure. So I think I'll hit that last one first. I think a short-term piece is a really tremendous opportunity. Like I said, I have a unique perspective. When I was in Washington, I was on our bargaining unit team with on the management side. So I have a little bit of experience there. And so I think there's always opportunities to seek understanding and make progress. I don't think it always needs to be contentious. I mean, maybe that's a little bit naive. I understand Massachusetts is a little bit different labor environment than most places, but I always look for those opportunities. As far as what know about Littleton, I understand that there's 3 shifts. There you have a call and volunteer, augmenting the career staff, and obviously the suburbs of Boston and that area. A little bit familiar with some of the other towns there, like Lexington and Marlborough. Spent some time in both of those. And the first one was my expectations. So I think my expectations are to really just provide a resource, and then it's an opportunity for me to give my perspective. And I don't have any skin in the game, so luckily I am available for a short term. Not a lot of people always are. But given my situation with MRI and being retired, and yeah, I can come in on short notice and stay for a short period of time. That's really no big deal. My expectations are I would come in and offer a unique perspective, and yeah, I think that's how I answer that.
As far as the geography of it, that's something that's not an issue for you as far as coming in on an interim basis. Is there an expectation from our side, or that you prepared? This is what you do, so you're prepared to, make arrangements to be here for that, whatever the term of the interim.
Yeah, I could be here throughout the term. I mean, I understand it's expected to go till probably sometime in April. That's no problem at all. Other expectations, in speaking with Brian Duggan, I think he talked about where I would have the opportunity to stay in the station for housing. I think that also offers a little bit more value than somebody who's going home every night, because I mean, either it's the set hours that you're paid, and I understand that, but it's not like I'm going to close my door and not answer questions and not be available to people. I'm there all the time. So I think that offers an additional value where, where somebody going home every night wouldn't have that perspective of what goes on in the station at night and on weekends and things like that. So I think that's an additional value for being there that much. And yeah.
I appreciate that. Just the question that's not necessarily a follow-up. Just when it comes to issues, whatever the issue might be, how would you say you approach it, whether it be what your personality is or how you approach, kind of like what is your leadership style when addressing any issues or conflicts?
So I think I'm really fair. I think I always listen to both sides and try to find out what the real core issues are. I spent a lot of time I was actually selected at one point to be the hearing officer in Washington, D.C., where I got to hear all the things that didn't hit the criteria for being a full-blown trial board. They gave it to me. It was a decision based from the local and the administration. They wanted one person, because the situation was where we'd have all these different people holding hearings, and you'd get a wide variety of responses. And so by making me the one hearing officer, we got consistency. And I think my experience there was that a lot of cases, never any complaints from the local. I think I proved that I was fair and could listen to what the real issues were and appropriately deal with them. I think, I'm not emotional. I don't make emotional decisions. I do data-driven decisions. So that's how I approach that.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments or follow-ups from the board members?
If I could, Ray, just thank you very much for taking the time to have us consider you as one of the applicants for this position. In your time as a chief in the past, how familiar are you with running an ambulance service, since that's a major part of the department uses?
Yeah, so in both, when I was a volunteer firefighter before, as a career firefighter, we had a volunteer ambulance that was staffed by the volunteers. And then in my career in DC, we were a fire-based EMS. So the ambulance was a part of our daily life every single day. We did ALS and BLS. I understand how it's a huge priority, and it was a huge priority in our department. And I think that's an important part of all fire service, to the fire-based EMS.
Thank you. And I'm jealous that you're down in Florida. No way, might be even temporarily.
I think we all are. And Joe, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to breeze by you there. My apologies. If there's no other questions or comments from the board members, we'll turn it back to you, Ray. Do you have any questions of us?
No, I think I pretty much understand it. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. I think it's a unique opportunity. When Brian told me about it, I was pretty excited about it, because I think a short term is actually more appealing than some of the longer interim pieces can go 6 or 8 months. And so I thought it was a unique opportunity. Looks like a great department. I'm glad that you're well on your way to finding a permanent chief. So I look forward to coming in and offering my perspective and working with you to keep the department heading in the right direction and prepare it for the future.
Thank you, Ray.
Excellent. Thanks, Ray. What we'll do is after Michelle will get in touch with Brian after the board has an opportunity to deliberate and let Brian know the results. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And it was a pleasure meeting you.
Thanks. Appreciate all of you. Look forward to seeing you.
Yo,
Take care.
the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So the next candidate is that HP, and that's Robert Robitaille. And here's Robert. Now, Robert, my name is Anthony Ansaldi. I am the town administrator here in Littleton, and I'm going to introduce you to our select board. Our chair is Chuck DeCoste.
Good morning, Robert.
Good morning.
Our vice chair is Paul Glavy.
It's Robitaille, right?
What's that?
Robitaille?
Yes, Robert Robitaille.
Okay, yeah.
You pronounced the
Tail or tie?
Robitaille. More
Okay.
of the New York's pronunciation than the French pronunciation.
Well, that's what I was picking up on, and I want to make sure we didn't get it wrong. But
Yeah.
so Anthony had it right.
If I went north of the border, it'd be Robitaille.
Yeah.
We.
Our clerk of the select board is Matthew Nordhaus,
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
and select board members Joe Knox
Morning.
and
Morning.
select board member Cindy Napoli, who is unable to, she's listening in, unable to speak, and she wishes her best to you. So Robert, we're going to start with maybe if you just go through for the board, what do you have to offer and what your qualifications to be interim fire chief of the town of Littleton? And then they'll follow up with questions by the board, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions to the board.
Okay. As Bob Robitaille, I've been in the fire service since the last century. I've been very involved in the town of Lisbon Fire Department, which is about the same size as the town of Littleton, within about 500 people. I'm a retired career firefighter. When I started there, it was a combination department, career and call firefighters. When I operated the hazmat unit, when I was the director chief of that unit, that was a regional type response unit. So the personnel were mostly volunteer from all over 3 different counties. And I managed that very well, and it was very successful while I was managing it. The volunteer ambulance service here in this community, I managed that for about 15 years. That was a growing period for them. They went from basically running in the red, having a hard time with volunteers and such, to where when I left that organization, it was had a managed budget, was well organized. It was running in the black, purchasing its own ambulances, equipment, the whole 9 yards. And I was running 4 shifts of volunteers because the biggest complaint was there was too many people. There was people that weren't being able to get calls because there was too many people that lived too close. So I had to divide them up into shifts so that they could split the call volume. Currently, I'm retired from Brunswick. I still am very involved in the local fire departments. I'm the deputy chief here. So basically what I bring is a lot of experience, a lot of background knowledge. I've dealt with unions, being a member of the union. I've held just about every position in the union with the exception of president. I have my gives and takes with unions. I think some are well managed, some are needed, some aren't. Sometimes they ask too much. It's kind of a game I have found over the years. And I'm a very type of, I'm the kind of a person that pushes people to be better. I stand off in the background while I'm assisting them. I give credit where credit's due. If people on my command did what they did, I tell who did what. I don't take credit when it's not mine. That's just the kind of person I am. I don't rattle. I'm a leader and motivator. I'm self-motivated. Which if you look through my resume, you'll see. I mean, I was one of the first 3 paramedics in the town of Brunswick. I was the first paramedic here in Lisbon. Happened to coincide by chance, but still, I push things to make it better. I don't like to sit around twiddling my thumbs. If I see something that needs to be improved upon, I try to improve upon it. I don't try to ruffle feathers. I try to work with people and compromise. I try to listen before coming to make a judgment. I've seen too many things that have happened where people didn't listen to what everything that was happening, and they made rash judgments that didn't benefit either side. Basically, that's it in a nutshell. I'm very good with numbers. I have lots of ideas. I believe in the value of call companies, where some people, they come in and to them it's, paid as professional, which in my book is not. Professionalism is how you present yourself and do your job. I've seen paid people who aren't too professional, and I've seen volunteers that are so professional that you wonder why they didn't become a career.
Okay. Robert, thank you for that summary of your career and your interest in Town of Littleton and the interim job. This time I'm going to open it up to questions of the board members. And Matthew?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about your approach to addressing the needs of the department immediately when you arrive versus like balancing the status quo with what you bring to the table from your outside experience, how you'd approach that?
Well, my approach is I believe in, currently I'm assuming that your deputy chief is managing the department as is.
That's correct.
He'd be one person I would sit down right off the bat and talk with to find out what is going on, what his experience has been with the personnel, with the department, and where it's been going, what seems to not be happening. Find out what his vision of where things should be going, so I can get an idea of the department's feel for the community, and vice versa. I would sit down and meet with you people again personally to find out what your expectations are of the departments and where you feel it should be headed and how you feel it's been working with the community. I can only learn so much by going on the web page and Facebook to find out what's going on. The fire service sometimes has a tendency of not updating things regularly. So a lot of information is 3, 4, 5 years old compared to what's actually going on now. I don't know how the department's been dealing with the COVID. I know towns and communities are starting to loosen up the face mask restrictions and stuff, but I don't know how much COVID is in your particular area. So there's a lot of little things to find out about to get an idea of direction. I got a lot of experiences from what happens to me and my exterior, my environment. I need to learn about what happens down in your environment and the directions they've gone to try and make corrections.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Mr. Knox.
Hi, Robert. I want to thank you for the time, taking the time to talk to us this morning. And even though this is an interim position, we find it as a very important measure to take care of our department. You've already answered some questions that I had you're very familiar with the ambulance service. That was one of my biggest concerns because that's over 80% of what we do in the department. I just want to know what how you would deal with personnel problems. If something were to arrive at the station, how would you encounter that person discipline-wise?
It depends on what the issue is. There are some issues that require immediate suspension. Some issues are more of taking the person off the side and finding out what's actually the cause of their issue. Sometimes a really good employee will all of a sudden go off the deep end for no apparent reason until you actually question them and find out that they're having issues back home or something, and they're dragging it to work with them. You got to find out what the core problem is to come up with a disciplinary action. Like I said, it'll vary from person to person from what they did. I mean, if somebody just walked in the station and slugged somebody, that's a little bit different than somebody's just in a very pissy mood and is not following orders.
Thank you. I'm impressed with the GPA of a 4.0. I never attained that my whole life.
Well, was it out of 4?
I'm like I says, I put 110% into everything I did. Even when I went through college, I took and worked a full-time job, plus I took 4 college classes one semester, and I'll tell you what, I don't want to do that again.
Very good. Mr. Glavy, want to take the next one?
Sure. Well, good morning, Robert. I've been trying to be consistent, asking the same multi-part question of each of the candidates, but I acknowledge in advance that you've already addressed some of these subject matters, so only respond to it as you feel is necessary to elaborate on your further answers. One question that does apply here, though, is because you live in Maine and we're here, what your expectations were in terms of a commute or relocation down here. And then the other related topics are based on what research you've done on Littleton Fire Department. You might be aware that where we are in the full-time hiring processes, we're hopefully not too far away from resolving that. The position actually has been vacant since the retirement of our last fire chief, Scott Wojcinski, effective last July 1st, I guess it was. So we've had the deputy acting as interim since that time. But we've put too much burden on him, and we hope the process is going to get resolved shortly with the full-time selection. This is likely to be a short-term interim appointment, and wonder whether you've given that some thought, how that appeals to you and how you would handle that. And then the final piece of it is, even though it's a short-term appointment, we do have important negotiations going on with the bargaining unit, so that would be an expectation that you'd be involved in that. So what are your thoughts on those related issues?
I have no issues with bargaining. Like I said, I believe in compromise and working through things to come to a common ground. I'm very good with coming up with some thinking out of the box to come to some conclusions. When I worked with the union in Brunswick, there was a lot of times that we would come up with some really out of the, thinking outside the box to come to what we wanted in the long run. So there's a lot of things I had to find out what the union is looking for, their expectations, what the community expectations are. I know everybody's only got so much money. That's the way it is. You only have so much you can do. I mean, you have responsibility to the citizens of the community. That's an expectation. Short-term wise, I know I would have to relocate down there. find a rental, or if there's an open campground, I'll just bring trailer down. I got a camper. Probably wouldn't be too comfortable this time of the year, but come spring and summer, not bad. But it'll depend on what the if it's going to be just a few months, or if it's going to be 6 months down the road, 12 months. We'll have to figure that one out when you get a better handle on what's going to happen. I mean, I know at best you're going to be, if you started today, you're probably going to be 2 months before you hire a full-time chief anyhow. If you started today with advertising, because you're going to advertise for a month and you're going to have to go through all the issues of background checks and interviews and the whole process. And the full-time position is a little bit, you have to spend a little more time to do, because that's someone you're going to hopefully have for 10 years down the road. Hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any of the board members have any follow-up questions or comments? Robert, this time, do you have any questions of us?
The only questions I would have basically are, how long do you expect to probably have an interim chief for before you think things will come around to where you'll be able to hire a new chief?
Well, let's go crack at it, and my colleagues can correct me if I'm off base here. But we are pretty far down the road as far as the hiring process for a full-term chief. We are hopeful that this will be 6 to 8 weeks, somewhere in that range, as far as an interim position is concerned. So we'll be our selection committee will be presenting this board with some finalist candidates to review, and assuming that goes well, we go through that process you just talked about with some of the background checks and the negotiations and that kind of thing. That's kind of where we're at. We're thinking probably, I'll just give an estimate of end of April, but it's not a contractual answer. It's
That's fine.
6 to 8 weeks, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, like I said, that's not an issue.
Okay. Any other thoughts or
The
questions?
issue is probably going to be more like trying to find some place to put a roof over my head for 2 months. That's all.
Okay.
We do have an excellent campground.
Oh, good. I
As
hope
for
it's
how
plowed
long it
out.
is right now,
I don't think they open until April 1st, though.
That could be a problem.
all right.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chuck.
Go ahead, Anthony. Go ahead. Nope, you got it.
Okay. Well, Robert, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure meeting you. After the board has an opportunity to deliberate, we will be in touch and let you know the results. So thank you for your time this morning.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wishing
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our next candidate is Randy White. Randy, my name is Anthony Ansaldi, as you know, town administrator here for the town of Littleton. Going to do the same thing that I did with all the other candidates and just introduce you to the board. Chuck DeCoste is the chair of the select board. Paul Glavy is the vice chair of the select board. Matthew Nordhaus is the select board clerk, and members Joe Knox and Cindy Napoli, who is listening in, unable to speak, but wishes her best and thanks all candidates for participating. So with that, Randy, how we're doing this is I'm asking candidates to maybe just introduce themselves, what their qualifications are, what you think you can bring to the position of interim fire chief for the town of Littleton, and then our chair will take over and have the board follow up with some questions. You're on mute, Randy.
How's that?
Yep.
Perfect.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Again, let me start over. Thank you for having me. I take this as a pleasure being able to interview with you people. My name is Randolph White. I go by the nickname of Randy. I grew up here in town. I'm married. Been married coming on 26 years this May, to my wife Tina, who's a backbone and glue of our family. I have two daughters, Brittany and Caitlin. My oldest daughter, Brittany, she's a nurse at Mount Auburn in Cambridge, working on her nurse practitioner. She's in a clinical. And my youngest daughter, Caitlin, she's finishing up her senior year at UMass Amherst as a nursing student as well. And she's doing her clinical as we speak at Children's Hospital in Boston. So that wraps up my family life a little bit. My professional career, I started here in the town of Littleton back in '83. I got on the call department, worked my way up through, was a dispatcher for police and fire for a short time as well. Worked full time for the town of Littleton, 86 to 87, which then I departed and went to the town of Boxborough, where I spent 32 years of the rest of my career. I ended up retiring out. I spent the last 8 years of my career in Boxborough as chief, which I enjoyed very much. And I retired it was May of 2009, I officially retired February of 19, and I stayed on as interim for them until July 5th of 19 as well. And that's pretty much myself in a nutshell, where I get my start in the fire service. And what I feel I could bring to the community is I live locally. I grew up here. I know the community well. I know a lot of the people, the department. I've known a lot of the members personally, professionally. We've been being a neighboring chief over the years. I was able to interact with a lot of them on mutual aid scenes, whether it be structure fires, the accidents we have on time to time on the highway, etc. I feel that I could bring a lot to the table and fit in very well with what the town is looking for. When I look at things like this, it's what's best for the town, what's best for the department. I feel like I bring that. I bring both of those and offer that.
All right, great. Thanks, Randy. Appreciate it. And thanks for being here. So, Matthew, I'll start with you. Any questions?
Good morning, Randy. First, let me say that you clean up nice.
Thank you.
So I've been asking all the candidates how they would balance, how they would approach the department with what they would bring in from the outside. But for you, I'm really curious if you feel as though there's anything about your close relationship with this department that would be a negative.
No, quite frankly, I don't think there's any negative. I think if anything, it's a strong positive. Having such a personal relationship with, being a neighboring chief for over the years and where I started my career here, I think it's actually a beneficial part. I think it'd be a good fit.
Thank you.
Joe, you want to jump in here?
I guess my biggest concern was, but Matthew had just talked about being so familiar with the people. Would it be a positive or negative? And you answered that question. So, and I know you're familiar with the ambulance service here. So my questions basically that I asked other people have already been answered. So I'll move on.
Mr. Glavey.
Morning, Randy. I've in the effort of consistency, I've been asking each of the candidates the same questions, and I'll throw it out there. But in reality, a lot of the details of the questions apply more to folks that we weren't familiar with or coming from far away. But nonetheless, I've been asking each of the candidates whether or not they were expecting to relocate. I'd be a little shocked if I heard that you were, given your proximity to the town. What you know about our situation in Littleton, the fire department, the fact that we've had the vacancy actually in the chief's position has been there since last July 1st with Chief Wadzinski's retirement. We actually have had an interim. You're familiar with that, no doubt. But, what we're hoping is that our need for an interim now to give some relief to Deputy Chief Clancy is a short term, whether you've given thought to that, and that while that's going on, one of the policy objectives we need to act on is negotiations with the bargaining units. So given the specific circumstances we're looking at here, a short term likely, interim position and yet a critical need in terms of negotiating the negotiations that are ongoing. What are your thoughts on those topics?
Well, I feel I can bring a lot to the table. Again, I offer a lot. I've sat on both sides of the negotiating table. For years, I was on the union side, and for the last 8 years, I was on the management side. So I have a very well, I think, rounded perspective of what both sides are looking for. I feel there's always wants and needs that each side wants when it comes to negotiations. It's a give and take without expectations. I mean, in all honesty, you got to come to the table. You got to bring cool heads to the table. You got to be able to get out what you feel the expectations are. What is the town looking for? What's the union looking for? And to see if you can't meet professionally somewhere in the middle. Getting all, in a heated discussion over certain issues, it's not how union negotiations should be. They should be nice and calm and cool. And hopefully you can, cooler heads prevail. I feel like if there's anything, I know I'm just a guest for a short time, as you indicated, and which I'm well aware of. Whether or not there's anything I could do to help facilitate, if there's any ongoing union issues right now with open contracts or whatever, I'd be more than willing to lend a hand. It's always been, I've always been the person that's been the middle person to bring everybody to the table and say, look it. And, you try to work with both sides. You understand where the management side is coming from. You also try to get a perspective of where the union's trying to come from. And hopefully be that, the piece in the middle that tries to get both sides to understand what the other party's looking at. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yep.
Sorry, I was muted. The dog was barking.
That's all right.
Reality.
Yep.
So you don't need to sign up at Minuteman Campground. You're good.
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay.
They don't until spring anyhow.
Yeah. We made that point. Yeah. Good point. So Randy, my concern was the same as Matthew and Joe, relative to, grew up here, started the fire service here, worked in a neighboring community. So I did a lot of, whether it be mutual aid or responding to Route 2 and 495, mutually. And you said yourself, a lot of these folks personally and professionally. I'm glad that you added that in. But as Scott would testify to, and I'm sure Tom Clancy would testify to, it's a little bit different when you're in, you're wearing the white hat. It's there's some certain challenges, and I appreciate the answer to Paul's question relative to the contract negotiations, and would certainly take any kind of insight or advice on how to get this to closure. And I think we're pretty close. But the question I have for you is, because of those personal / professional relationships, and being a resident of the town, I definitely see that as an asset in many ways. But again, Tom and Scott could probably testify better than I can about the challenges that presents. How do you feel your personality would, what you offer, how you would deal with any kind of conflict or any issues that might come up with the members?
I feel I'm very good at conflict resolution. Everybody wants to be heard. Somebody comes to you with a problem, you have to take a moment and listen, because maybe you're not seeing something from their perspective that they're perceiving. The perception is a lot of how people gain their, of what they think is going on. Because maybe you haven't looked at it from their point or their perspective. And then when they talk with you, you try to express your side. Say, okay, I've listened to your side. Now let's listen to how I'm looking at it, because they don't understand sometimes from a management or a chief standpoint. You have more responsibilities, and sometimes they're not always looking at the big picture themselves. I always try to tell people, you need to look outside the box. Just because you look at it from one way, from a chief standpoint, you're looking at what's best for the town, the community, the department as a whole, you as an individual. And hopefully when you sit down and have that open conversation, at the end, you'll both understand that, look, we're both here to have a job to do. And this is why I chose to do, or what we need to do. And I've given you an opportunity to express your concerns and your feelings. That's how these newer kids today are being taught. When I was in the fire service, and as a chief, it's like we had to learn to change the way we worked with the newer members coming up. They're taught differently in school these days. They're taught to question and ask and, theorize, well, why are we doing this? And it's like, when I was in the fire service, you didn't say, boom. Somebody told you to do it. You just said, yes, sir. You just went and did it. And they all want to have, they all have respects, they want to be heard. So I feel when you take a broad look at all of that, I think that's how, any kind of resolution, if you have any kind of problems. I mean, I've been very good at those.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? Well, I'm sorry, I went off a little.
No, it's I appreciate it. No, you spoke from your heart, I think. So I appreciate that. So, any members have any other follow-up questions or any other comments? Okay, Randy, at this time, if you have any questions of us, please fire away.
No, I mean, I know you're looking for a short-term gap, which I'm more than willing and comfortable to fill for you. If there's anything else I can do, just don't hesitate for a ask. I always have an open door policy. When I was the chief, I always had that. If there's anything, pick up a phone, shoot me an email, a text, meet for a cup of coffee, whatever. I find sometimes one-on-one conversations and dialogue sometimes a lot better, especially keeping open lines of communications. That's about it.
Great. Randy, thank you so much for coming in this morning. Michelle, the board will deliberate after one more interview, and then Michelle will get in touch with all candidates and let them know the results of the board's deliberations and the selection that they made. So thank you. Pleasure meeting you again.
Thank you as well.
Take care, Randy.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Randy.
Take care.
Okay, I'm going to let in the next candidate and the last candidate. Michael, hello. My name is Anthony Insaldi. I'm the town administrator here in Littleton. I'm going to start with how I did with all candidates and introduce you to the board. And then I'll ask you to go through maybe some of your qualifications and what makes you an ideal candidate for interim fire chief for the town of Littleton. So our select board chair is Chuck DeCoste.
Morning, Michael.
Morning, sir.
Our vice chair is Paul Glavy.
Morning, Chief.
Morning, sir.
Our clerk is Matthew Nordhaus.
Hello.
Our select board member Joe Knox.
Good morning.
And listening in, unable to speak, but wishes thanks all candidates and appreciates you applying, is Cindy Napoli. Just Mike, your camera is off, and I don't know if that's intentional, but I just wanted to let you know we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
That's great. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So, Mike, again, maybe some of what qualifications that you have as far as being interim chief and what you can bring to the town of Littleton.
Yes, thank you, Administrator Anthony. I have a total of a little over 39 years experience in the fire service. I started my career in 1975. Upon graduation from college in 1979, I was hired for the city of Nashua, New Hampshire Fire Department. In 1987, I was appointed to superintendent of training and safety officer for the fire department in Nashua. It's a department of 162 men and women. In 1992, I was honored to be chosen as the fire chief for the town of Wolfboro, New Hampshire, up in the Lakes region. In 1999, I moved from Wolfboro to the town of Hooksett, New Hampshire as their fire chief. I retired in the state of New Hampshire in 2003 and took my pension. And then in May of 2004, I was hired by the town of Norwood, Massachusetts as their fire chief with a department of 79 members comprised of 3 unions. I served there until 2014, May of 2014, and I retired and pensioned in 2014. I have a strong background in labor management, negotiations, and budgeting. I've submitted a detailed resume. I also have a strong background in teaching and served in many capacities and throughout New Hampshire and New England, and have been very actively involved in the fire service during that time.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So just going to open it up to the members to ask them some questions and or offer any comments. Matthew.
I have two questions. One is, have you worked as an interim chief before?
No, I have not had the opportunity to work as an interim chief, but I feel what I have a strong background in, that I would be able to help your community, you as a board of selectmen in the community, is all three of my chief positions. I was the chosen candidate. I was an outside candidate. I came from the outside into organizations that were in strong need of leadership. And I believe that my professionalism and my job history and has shown that I was able to make those departments better and assist the community.
And then also, could you talk a little bit about how you might approach what your approach to being an interim chief would be, as far as bringing in outside expertise versus maintaining the status quo within the department?
What I've learned, sir, in a little over 22 years as a fire chief and 27 years as a chief officer, is the first thing that I would ask would be to sit down with you all as the Board of Selectmen, along with the town administrator, and find out what current needs are, as well as issues that are outstanding. And then through the assistance of different organizations within the state of Massachusetts and resources that they provide to the towns and cities, would utilize them to assist you in meeting your needs. When I went to Norwood in 2004, the selectmen knew what the issues were. They had done a small study. They provided me that list. We prioritized that list, and we accomplished in approximately 2 years, we turned many things around.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Michael. Mr. Knox.
Michael, it's great that you're taking the time to sit down with us and talk about the possibilities of being an interim, even though it might be a short period of time. We know how important it is to choose the right person. A couple questions I have. One is that what would, since you retired in 2014 from Norwood, what would bring you forth right now to be an interim? What would your interest be? How come you haven't done it before? And the second one would simply be, with the ambulance service being such a big part of our work in town, how familiar are you with managing that kind of service?
Yeah, I retired in 2014, but I've stayed active in my organizations. I'm a life member for the Mass Fire Chiefs, as well as the New Hampshire Fire Chiefs, as well as the New England Fire Chiefs. So I've stayed active. I did apply one other time since my retirement for the town of Auburn, Mass. They chose another chief within the Massachusetts Fire Service that was retired for that position. I've always wanted to do some internship, interim fire chief positions. I've been on the list with the Massachusetts Fire Chiefs since I retired. I continue to put my name in every year for that list. As far as the ambulance stuff goes, my resume will show you that in one of the priorities in Norwood was that Norwood averaged about 3,500 medical calls a year. They were running a single ambulance. The need for paramedic service was great. The hospital ran a intercept paramedic service, but we're in the process of doing away with it. I was able to get approval, working very closely with the Board of Selectmen as a committee, the union, and myself and other administrative staff. In about 18 months, we were able to get a paramedic program approved. We hired 8 personnel. We increased revenues from the ambulance service from approximately $600,000 when I left in 2014 through the use of coastal billing in Massachusetts. We had raised revenues to $1.3 million. I have extensive background in EMS going back to 1975. And in fact, for 9 years, I served on the EMS coordinating board, appointed to 3 consecutive terms by Governor Sununu in New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Michael. Paul, Mr. Glavy.
Thank you. Howard, some of this may sound like it doesn't directly apply to you, because it doesn't, but I'm trying to ask the same general set of questions in a package of each of the candidates. So what I've been asked, since some of them were from outside of the area, I've been asking whether they were anticipating commuting or relocating to Littleton. I'm guessing that doesn't really apply in your case. You'd probably be commuting from Norwood. Is that fair to say?
I would start out, sir, by commuting, but I've always been under the old school belief that it's critical that when you work for a community, the importance of the fire chief's position. And my goal would be in a very short period of time to find living arrangements within the community. I feel it's critical. Every single community that I've been chief in, I have relocated to and lived within the community.
Okay, and thank you for that. And that kind of speaks to the bigger question I have with a couple of pieces to it, which is, how much do you know of Littleton in our particular situation right now with the fire department? We've had a vacancy since Chief Wodzinski retired, effective last July 1st. Since that time, our deputy's been, Tom Clancy's been our interim. He's done a great job, but we put too much on him. And even though we're closing in on what we hope is the end of our permanent fire chief selection process, we need to get an interim in there to help the situation, but it's likely to be a pretty short, time period. But within that time period, we have important business going on, not the least of which is negotiations with the bargaining unit, which are underway. So I wonder how you give the job in those terms, that it's likely to be a relatively short-term engagement, and that in the context of that, there's still going to be important work coming up to speed and participating in the negotiation.
Now that goes back to what I talked about, is that I would hope to sit with the entire board as well as the administrator, find out what your immediate needs are in order to work on and complete those objectives and goals that you have based on your current needs. I've done a review of the community profile and the job description. I know that you're going through some growth. I know that you have both career as well as call officers and firefighters. I know that there's an executive assistant, a deputy chief. I've looked over your apparatus. I understand in 2018 you expanded your fire facility and remodeled it. During that short period of time, whether it's short or whatever it ends up being, the goal would be is to be in weekly contact with the board through their meetings, keep them abreast, and work on whatever you feel are the critical needs until you're able to get a successor to the chief that retired.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
Just taking notes. So my question, like the others, try to keep it somewhat down the same vein as we have for other candidates. And it's more about you and your personality and your leadership style and how you handle or deal with any kind of conflict or any issues.
Well, the first thing that I would do through my experience and education is that you kind of let the issue at hand give everybody some breathing room and try to comply, collect all the facts and so forth. What I have found is to ask people to put things down in writing to allow us to do a review beforehand. I never hold meetings without the deputy or some other individual being with me, whether it be the HR director, the town administrator, or even yourselves if necessary. And then try to go through a fair process as well. If it's a union member, you would allow union representation. If it's a call firefighter, I would ask his or her officer to be with them. And I think what's important is that you've got to listen to all sides and let everybody basically vent and then determine what the best course of action is. One of the things I've learned over the years is even when I do make a decision in the end, and the decision would be mine, I would go to the town administrator, and depending on the severity of the issue, ask the administrator for executive session with the selectmen and share the results of what we've learned and let them know what course of action we're going to take. The biggest thing that happens in many communities, and we all know this, is that you learn or the administrator learns that I've taken disciplinary action. And by the time it gets to that level or is released, it's not what we all know happened.
Okay. I like that. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from board members?
No.
Michael, this time, do you have any questions of us?
No, I thank you for the opportunity to be interviewed and look forward to possibly hearing from you and hope that I may be able to assist you in helping your community until you name a successor.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you very much this morning for joining the board. What's going to happen, the board will take an opportunity now to do some deliberation, and then our HR director, Michelle Vibert, will be in touch with the candidates and let them know the results of the board's deliberation. So thank you for your interest and for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Tom, Mr. Anthony. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, meeting is yours.
Mr. Chair, I gotta step out of the room for 1 minute. We'll be right back.
You want to do, does everybody want to do a quick 2-minute bio break or?
Good idea.
Matthew, you agreeing?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. All right. Just waiting on Paul. Paul, you back? It's like Princess Leia.
You hear my AirPods died. Is this working?
What?
Thanks, Chuck.
Airplane pilot.
Matthew, thanks for having my back on that. There we go. Cindy, if you're still listening, if don't know where you're at with your other meeting, but all right. So thank you all, because I think this was a pretty good process. I know that there was some questions as to whether or not this is the right way to do it or whatnot, but I do think this was a good process. And I think we had some good candidates that came before us, and I think we'll be well served if we hire one of these folks on an interim basis. And it's looking forward to helping Tom and acting swiftly. So Matthew, want to just stay with the same rotation, and do you mind kind of kicking us off?
Sure. I think my preference would be for either Randy or the gentleman from Norwood. I think that the experience with Massachusetts unions is important. I think someone who's nearby is important. I think that the gentleman from Norwood has a ton of experience and administrative experience, especially, which is, let's be honest, probably what the interim chief is going to end up doing, and not operational. And Randy, I think Randy would be fantastic. The only thing that I worry about is if it gets into negotiations, it's not that I don't think he's going to be impartial, or I think that he's going to choose sides. I think actually he can be completely impartial, but I'm afraid that optically, there might be people who are on the other side of it who feel as though because of his relationship, things are not fair. So even if that's not the case, and I don't think it would be, that's the only qualm I have. Otherwise, I think he would be excellent. And I think his experience and the fact that he lives in Littleton are both huge, huge benefits. And that's what I have.
Okay. Thanks, Matthew. Joe, want to jump in?
Yeah, I picked out three right away. The first one, Mr. Olson, and Randy, then the gentleman from Norwood,
Michael.
Yeah, Michael. I echoed what Matthew said about being in Massachusetts. Mr. Olson, just being that far away, I'd probably rule him out out of the three that I was choosing from. But both Michael and Randy are the two that I'm looking closely at. If anything, I'd probably lean toward Randy because he knows the area extremely well. He's been in the area his whole life, and I think that's an advantage when we make a choice for an interim right now.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Paul?
I'll try to just follow the pattern of the notes I wrote down relative to the candidates as we interviewed them. At first, the gentleman from the Cape, Mr. Olson, kind of wowed and impressed with his, enthusiasm, and couldn't wait to get in there and do a bunch of things. But the more I listened, the more I heard that type of candidate would have been more appropriate if we were hiring a new chief, or if we were hiring somebody last August in expectations that they'd be around for 8 months and have a chance to come in with an armload of SOPs and SOEs. It's like, time out. We don't even know where the men's room is yet. It's like the realities of what we're dealing with weigh heavy in my mind as to how I view these candidates. And also, he was too many references to MRI, frankly. You're not working for MRI, you're working for the town of Littleton. And that was a little troublesome. And I wasn't, I don't know, I guess overall, without trying to impugn any of the candidates, wasn't wowed by the field we got just because of some of the impediments that they present by virtue of the fact that they're from far away, three of the five. And one was a last minute addition as of yesterday, one of the more close ones. Second one, who on paper, Mr. Gretz, I would have thought was the least likely to impress me. I'll say this. I mean, they all, or for the most part, most of them have the right skill sets and resume to slide into the position. What Mr. Gretz had, I thought, was the best, one of the best tones and low-key approach that I think could be helpful given it's a short-term situation, and might be helpful in the negotiations too. That being said, I mean, Florida, Washington, D.C., there's a lot of disconnects there. I mean, even if he can, he can make, takes the relocating part on himself, and I guess that would apply to Mr. Olson and Mr. Robitaille as well. There's still a lot of differences that would have to be learned over a short period of time, and I just that isn't meeting our particular need. The third candidate, I guess, was Mr. Robitaille, and he didn't seem to have as much of a grip on what our needs were, where we were at in the hiring process. Plus, he's in Maine, and he's a deputy now, and that seems to be the highest position he's attained. So I'm not sure that's the best fit there. Randy White, who we all know to some extent. If we didn't know him beforehand, we know him through his help on the search committee. Keep in a neighboring town, lives in town, knows the department. If our needs are immediate, for those reasons, I think he's the best candidate. And then just to hear him speak to his approach to the job, I think, again, a lot like Mr. Gretz, I was struck by the kind of calm and cool approach to things, which I think can only be helpful in that situation where personality conflict or whatever kind of frayed tensions there are there just due to the long gap in filling the position. I think he would be helpful there. As far as how any of these candidates might be in the negotiating session, I mean, they're whoever the chief is, interim chief, they're there to represent the town and management, and that's kind of clear. And as far as beyond that, I'd be looking for a personality that can match their experience with kind of a level-headedness. And I think Mr. White and Mr. Gretz have that. Candidate, Mr. Howard, I just can't get away from, first of all, I don't think he had too much knowledge of our situation here in Littleton, didn't reflect that there'd been a lot of looking into what we were dealing with. He can certainly speak to his own background and expertise well. It's, been a lot of big communities, Nashua, Norwood, departments of 79 or 100 employees, and that's not Littleton. And also, he hasn't held a position as an interim or a mentor or a chief since 2014, and that's coming up on 10 years ago. And that's a little worrisome too. So, I give them all consideration on their merits and background, but I think Mr. Chief White would be my first choice. And if for some reason that was not, for I think for some obvious reasons, he could slide in, he could meet our immediate need, and there'd be very little training time necessary there, which is not an additional burden I think we really need to have at this point. But if for some reason he wasn't the candidate, I think the best candidate on who would have the best personality to fit in the position and blend well and serve us well in a short-term capacity my preference of the remaining candidates is Mr. Gretz.
Thanks, Paul. I saw Cindy's thing saying connecting or something like that. Cindy, you available to speak or? No. Okay.
She was trying to connect. Chuck,
I just saw something spinning or something down there and I just didn't know if she was trying to.
she was trying to connect by phone, so
Oh.
I can try to reach her.
Oh, there she
I'm
goes.
here. Hey, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep, good
Yes,
morning.
Good morning. Hi. Sorry. I've been listening in. So yeah, just listening to the comments made so far. And I'm just going to keep this really brief. I personally, appreciate certainly everybody coming forward. I just looking at the situation that we're in right now, that it will be a short-term situation, and some of the maybe issues that we have seen arise in that department recently. I just personally, what I was really hoping to get for the interim was somebody who isn't familiar really with the personnel in that department, that maybe could come from the outside and really give us an objective approach. And I did like Mr. Howard's approach in that he said he was going to sit down, talk to us, talk to the town administrator, find out exactly what the needs are, like ask the right questions. He appreciated that his role here was going to be brief and short. But he was going to ask, what are you looking for from me in the interim? And what should I be aware of? He was asking questions. Which I thought were important, as opposed to just saying, I'm from the area, I know the players, I can step into this role, which I have no doubt that Mr. White can do that. But I just don't know if that's the best thing, as far as being so familiar with everybody in that department at this stage. I think personally, it would be more helpful to us perhaps to take this opportunity to have somebody from the outside come in with a fresh set of eyes and just be able to step into that role, but also maybe provide us with some observations that we're not aware of, or we're not picking up on, or maybe some suggestions. Just a different perspective, I think, would be really helpful at this point. So that's where I'm coming from on this.
Okay. Thanks, Cindy. So I regardless of who we do choose, Chief Howard, the last candidate, kind of summarized some of the things that I was thinking about as far as expectations to us, to the board, when he talked about listening to all sides, and anytime there is a conflict, summarizing that and getting on executive session and making sure that everything's communicated back to the board. And one of the things that I really appreciated that he said is kind of looking at what we learned from the process. If there is a conflict and he's dealing with a conflict, taking a look at what we've learned and identifying that and seeing how we can not make the same mistake again. I kind of echo Joe. The three that stood out more to me were the first one, Chris, and then Randy, and then Michael. Chris was extremely dynamic, but Paul, I take your observation. I hadn't looked at it that way, that maybe it's just too much to take all at once with all his standard operating procedures and standard operating guidelines and visions and values, and which is awesome. And that's probably would be a good mentor or someone that we could bring in to do some of that communication training and things like that for that department down the road. But I'm not sure that you kind of narrowed it down for me to Randy and Michael. I do believe that either Randy or Michael, especially since it is a short term, can step in. I do have a lot of the same thoughts and concerns that Cindy just Cindy just expressed. I asked the question of Randy because it was a concern of mine. I did appreciate the way that he answered it. Seeing it as a positive, knowing the folks. But we do have the history of Tom and Scott being in there. It might be good to have a fresh set of eyes from somebody from the outside. With the amount of experience that Chief Howard has, if I'm showing my hand, I would lean at this point towards Chief Howard for the interim. So we've kind of put it all out there. Does anybody want to argue points for one way or another, or do you want to put a motion out there and see how it flies?
I'll just a very brief comment. I agree with Miss Napoli 100%, and based on her comments, I think that Mr. Howard would be the right one.
Want to make a motion to that end?
Sure. I move that the select board vote to appoint Michael Howard as interim fire chief for Littleton, Mass.
Subject to negotiations.
Subject to negotiations.
Get a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Nordhaus, seconded by Ms. Napoli. As a roll call vote. I'll start with the same order. Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Discussion first, Mr.
I'm
Chair?
sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Yep.
Okay, but I'm interested in consensus, so I'll be voting yes, since
I'm
that
sorry.
seems to be a majority position on the board.
Thank you, Paul. Mr. Knox, any discussion, deliberation?
No, they're both good candidates. I would still favor Randy White, but I'll go with the consensus of the board if they choose Mr. Howard.
Well, to Anthony's point, it's subject to negotiation. So I don't think this is in any way a slight to Randy. I just think that given the short window that we're in, I think he might be able to retain and maintain those relationships that he does have.
Yeah, I just take a different viewpoint as instead of bringing someone in that's from the outside, I think from interim, having someone with the vast knowledge of the area and the department would be a plus, but I'm not gonna be negative toward the choice of the board.
Yeah, I understand that. I value that as well, Joe. But although I don't necessarily want the chief to have to be running on calls and knowing, where 609 Newtown is. All right, so motion made and seconded. Roll call vote, Mr. Nordhaus,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Glavy,
Yes.
Ms. Napoli,
Yes.
and I'm in favor as well. So, guys, I appreciate this process. I appreciate your time. Do we have any other business, Anthony, before we take a motion to adjourn?
We can, I don't know if a board member wants to join Michelle and just, we have arranged the same thing that we did with Tom as far as the fire chief. If a member wants to participate, other than that, I'm sure Michelle could walk through.
Can I ask Matthew or Joe, having been involved in the chief selection? I'm open to anybody, but just the fact that Matthew and Joe were involved in the process for the full-time chief. Do either of you have an interest or definitely don't want to do it?
I'll be happy to do it. I'll defer to Joe if you'd prefer to do it.
That's fine. Before we get off too, I just want to remind people that the Neshoba Tech thing is this morning too, if anyone has an interest in.
What time was that, 10?
That was at
Yeah.
10 o'clock. Yeah. So I asked Sean O'Brien where I was unable to join at 10 to make sure.
I didn't even
somebody
realize the
sits in.
time.
Yeah, it's but we'll get the information. I'll send it to the board once Dr. Pigeon sends it over to us.
And if Michelle, you could just get in touch with me on the scheduling for that, I'd be appreciated.
Anthony, when you're talking to Dr. Pigeon, if she, in the past, anybody that's attended, she's given out the town seal, notepads and stuff like that. I've used them to send notes out to residents. If each of us could get a packet of those, that'd be great. We very much appreciate it. And
Yeah,
They go to use.
they do.
oh, they do. We'll do. Obviously, this year was virtually, so they may have taken the opportunity to not do that. But I know that those are really great, and if the board wants, we could actually look and request them to print some of those out for us. So we'll do that as well. So first, we'll try to get the freebie, but if not, then we'll look at we'll see if we can get some of those cards made up. They do come in handy.
Yeah, just little note cards, like a thank you card, and there's also just the, like the 5x7 pad that you can just jot a quick note on and then throw into a smaller envelope and send off to people. I know we do a lot via email, but I think people do appreciate getting a handwritten note from us from time to time, depending upon what's going on. All right.
So Michelle is listening and she will reach out, Matthew, to you, and the two of you can work with Mr. Howard and then get back to the rest of the board.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn, anyone?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Mr. Nordhaus made the motion. Mr. Glavy seconded it. It's a roll call vote. Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Ms. Napoli, if you're still there?
Yes, I.
And in favor as well. So we are adjourned. Guys, thanks very much. Hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.